Hello and welcome to H2O Stream. This is Martin for H2O Global News with Lois Gill, Head of Regulatory Affairs at Everflow. Launched in 2015, Everflow is a British company that specialises in supplying water to businesses. Here, Lois is going to lay out her vision for promoting competition in the market as a way to improve services and enhance sustainability and efficiency. So hi Lois, how are you?
Hi Martin, I'm well, thank you. Yes, very nice to meet you.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to this. So I suppose if I get things rolling, how about we start off? Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Of course. So I head up Environment and Regulatory Affairs at Everflow. So I look after the work that we do around sustainability, and I also handle our interactions with the regulatory sphere. The water market is a regulated market, and engagement with market activity in that sphere, so kind of market improvement. There's lots of groups and bodies in that sense. I've been with Everflow for 4 years, and before that had a career in the water industry stretching more than a decade, and I've been in roles linked to long-term planning, strategic improvement, that kind of thing, before I kind of came into the regulatory space, and there was always that connection there. And then Everflow as a company, so as you mentioned, we started out as a water company. We business to business, focusing specifically on small and medium businesses in that space, and now branching out into multi-utility, so serving offering multiple services to the same small businesses to kind of make it simpler for them to do business with utilities.
Excellent. So, I mean, in a short time, Everflow has become a sort of leading independent water supplier. What would you think are the main reasons behind this?
Yeah, so we're a water retail supplier, and that's still a relatively new concept. So just to sort of maybe try and explain that a little bit. So the idea is that introducing some competition into water provision. Well, how would you go about doing that? Because traditionally we've got these regionally based monopoly water companies that provide water and wastewater services. So the way that was achieved, as in energy before, was by law, and the government separated water companies into customer-facing companies, and then the kind of more technical water provisions, wastewater service provision. And so those customer-facing companies become retail companies, of which we are one, and they handle billing and metering, customer service management, that side of things. In water, that's only for non-households at the moment, since 2017 in England, and since 2008 in Scotland. So that's what a water retail company is, and there's equivalents in other markets, and that's where we're starting to enter into. So once you've created that environment, it then becomes possible for other people to start coming into this market that is maybe reasonably closed, and things have always been done the same way. So it becomes possible to create a new water retail company, which is what Everflow is. And it competes against those kind of breakaway companies that came out of the regional monopolies. They were just created by law, so they were the default suppliers for businesses. And we're really unique in this market because we're the biggest to have grown from absolutely nothing. So all of the customers that we serve, we've acquired, we've switched them to us, and they've chosen to come and do business with us. And we're now one of the larger companies in the market, sort of medium-sized. And that's really distinctive at the moment in this market, which has been quite slow to take off. Most businesses are still being served by their default regional supplier. So we're not the only company that's winning customers by any stretch, but we're certainly the leading company for switching far more than anybody else by quite a long way. It's quite a tough market, and it's still quite early days. At the moment, there's quite a lot of regulation in place. So there's a fairly slim profit to be made due to that level of regulation. and so we're having to compete with regulated default prices that are already quite low. But where we've managed to succeed is that we've really been quite agile. We've been able to innovate from the start and build from scratch how you would want to operate one of these kind of water retail companies. And we've been able to make, quite brave choices. In particular, we've built our own technology system and started out as a billing system and then an end-to-end customer management system that automates our processes and enables us to operate very cost effectively. And we're all about making utilities simple. That's kind of our main value that is driving everything that we're doing. And so we're tech enabled because that just makes it really simple for customers to get a quick, effective service, and really streamlines everything and makes it a smooth journey. And we're kind of trying to replicate that now across a multi-utility context.
Excellent. I mean, it's certainly been an impressive rate of growth. So, I mean, you touched upon this in that answer, but what do you feel are the present problems of the water market in the UK?
So, I mean, the water market is in a bit of a crisis at the moment. And I think, many in the UK certainly would be aware of it in a way that they haven't been before. That's because there's been this quite significant rise in pollution of wastewater into the natural environment. I think the industry has been fairly overlooked and ignored for a long time and out of the public eye and not even on the regulatory agenda really for central government. And people don't really know what they've got till it's gone. So something that was working fine and then suddenly there seem to be some problems, that starts to draw attention. So the symptoms of the fact that there seems to be a bit of a crisis going on is this wastewater pollution, but there's actually other things going on as well. The threat of water shortages is becoming less of a threat and more of a reality. Certainly in parts of England, water scarcity is becoming a real problem. And at the same time, we have this leakage problem that seems to be actually quite difficult to get under control, and some companies in particular are finding it very difficult to achieve targets. And my experience working in long-term planning, investment in infrastructure and so on, particularly before coming into the retail market, would be that there's just been a long-standing lack of investment in the sector, and there's a number of reasons why that has been the case. But I would say that the infrastructure simply isn't being renewed, it's being maintained. And so the risk of major disruption to service is growing. There needs to be investment in kind of renewing infrastructure and also in new technology and new ways of providing service. And the reality is that is a bit risky. And if funding is very tight, it's actually quite difficult to innovate and take those kind of risks. And so public confidence in the sector is taking a real hit at the moment. I think part of that is down to the behaviour of some of those long established water companies. So where there hasn't been enough investment for the long term, and that's becoming more and more apparent, there has been a lot of profit passed on to shareholders. And that's very difficult for people to swallow and get their heads around how that's been allowed to happen. And I think people feel, understandably, the public, powerless to hold those companies to account. And the basic way that you do that with a supplier of services is that you choose to take your business elsewhere. So there's, a real issue there. And that's the kind of context in which we're all operating in the water sector. Yes, I mean,
there certainly has, you can't ignore what's being reported in the media over the past couple of years. It's, definitely public perception is a big problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to solve these problems, you believe that the water market of the future should be more open. So why do you think this?
So, I mean, I guess what we mean by more open is that it's easier for new ideas to come in through opening up more competition in the market. Then, yes, I think that's a big part of the principle behind introducing competition in any market, is that it opens it up to new ideas. And I wouldn't want to claim that competition is the silver bullet to all of those problems that exist in the market, but I think it can definitely help, and I think its role is often overlooked. The water market hasn't been, totally closed by any means from an innovation point of view. And there are ways that it has tried to bring in expertise from other markets, fresh ideas from other sectors. But there's a difference between that and then having some sort of outsiders actually come in and be part of the market and compete within it. I think that shakes things up somewhat more. And that's what competition can achieve if you attract the right innovators in, and it's attractive enough to come in and start to solve some of the big problems. And I think that having a choice of supplier, as I hinted at before, can really help with consumer confidence. It's a simple but effective way to building trust if, as a customer, you feel that you are able to choose where you give your business and you've chosen your supplier. So there's a little bit more of a trusting relationship there. And I think that matters because companies need to be in a position to influence consumer behaviour in this sector. The way that consumers use their services is a key part of being able to maintain service provision into the future. I think there's also pressure that competition creates on companies to do the right thing, because there's always the risk there that you lose your customers. And in our market, we've seen that business customers are leaving other water retailers, and sometimes us when we don't get it right, when they feel let down, or maybe because they're drawn to another company that offers something better, that has clear, strong values that are driving how it functions. So, we see all those factors at play in customers who switch to Everflow. There's sometimes negative reasons and there's sometimes positive reasons. And that's a good thing. That's how markets should work. I think, competition can play a role.
Right. So although you touched upon this in your last answer, what would you think are the main benefits of competition?
So there were a series of benefits that the government set out to achieve. The governments in both Scotland and England, where there are markets for competitive water service, and they were very similar. The obvious one being price saving, which is what people think of when they think of competition and the benefits of competition, but also improving customer service and increasing innovation, which I've talked about before. And then there was also this very specific benefit around water efficiency, and the need for that links to both a crisis around supply demand. There's real risk that there isn't going to be a balance there between the two, and that demand is starting to outstrip supply. But also there's this cost link as well. So if you really want to make big cost savings for a customer, the way that you can do that in a more substantial way is to deliver some sort of water efficiency service for them. And so that was a very particular sought after benefit. Speaking specifically about retail competition, I think it's a really good thing to have companies that concentrate their whole business on engaging well with customers and developing a trusting relationship and focusing on innovation just in that space. And we've already been able to offer customers lower prices, better service as well than they've experienced elsewhere, because, as I mentioned before, we've built our business up from scratch, designed it how you'd want to run it, and have a purpose-built technology enabler. So we've kind of worked really hard in that space, and that's what people are choosing to switch to us for. The greater water efficiency piece, which sits more with me, in our business has not been quite so easy to deliver. As a benefit of competition, it's not as straightforward and it's certainly not automatic, but I do see this as a bit of a personal challenge now, and that's what we're really trying to deliver. If you look at the industry's attempts to innovate, I would say in the past they'd probably be quite technically focused. That's a good thing. We want to see, the technical aspect, the engineering side of water and wastewater service moving forward. Those are really crucial functions, and I wouldn't want to detract from that in any way. But if you take an issue like water efficiency, I feel there remains a tendency to talk about innovative products and fittings and fixtures rather than the innovation that is needed to engage the customer. And because ultimately we need the customer to engage and take up those services, it's no good working out what a home that uses, say, 50 litres per person per day would look like if nobody's actually going to be prepared to buy one. And customers aren't even taking up offers of basic kind of free services at the moment because they don't really understand why they should. They don't have an incentive. And so that's a real challenge. And that is the challenge now for the water retailer to take on with support, appropriate support from regulators and others in the market. We've seen that our customers are more responsive to our attempts to engage with them on this than perhaps other water companies have found. And I believe that's because of that trust relationship that we've got. So where customers have chosen us as a supplier, I think that's really significant. And yeah, the way that consumers behave is a critical factor to being able to deliver a reliable service in future, and certainly to reduce demand. In a similar way, pollution levels and sewer flooding in homes, that is linked to consumer behaviour, particularly in the non-household sector. Fats, oils and greases being allowed to go into the sewers and poured down the sink. And that creates fatbergs, which you probably know about. They're in the news from time to time. So consumer behaviour is really critical, and that is an area where engaging consumers is an area where innovation is sorely needed. I do think the biggest case where we need to get consumers to act differently, the first priority is ensuring that we can balance supply and demand for water in the future. And that is critical to contributing to larger goals around reducing carbon emissions. The water industry is actually emitting a good proportion of the UK's carbon emissions, and so that mustn't be forgotten. That's part of why we need to pursue that agenda. And it doesn't mean that water's something that customers need to stop using or use it so sparingly that life just becomes really miserable. But there's so many opportunities for us to cut waste, and there's a lot of wasteful use of water, particularly there are a lot of leaks about, and those are happening on water infrastructure, but they're also happening on private property within homes and businesses.
Yeah.
So that's a very long answer to the question of what are the benefits.
There's many. I suppose that does lead quite nicely into my next question, which is sort of how will the competition within the market enhance water sustainability and sort of environmental awareness?
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at it before that it won't happen automatically. And the reason I say that is that our experience, and I know that the experience of others in the market shows that there isn't really a market there at the moment for sustainability, particularly in the water sector, for customers to pay for water efficiency services. Actually, they don't even want to take up free services because why would I? It's a disruption. And I don't need that. There's very little incentive to act. And I think it's critical that the government recognises that it has a role to play here. It needs to act in the way that it did in the energy market. And what happened in that market, one example would be when bills were increased via a green levy. That created a sudden uplift in prices that, of course, everybody will wake up and pay attention at that point. But actually it was purposeful as well, so it created a fund for applications, and many of us will have heard of how you could in the past apply for money to invest in putting solar panels in, and some of those costlier investments, but transitions that needed to be made a bit more culturally normal. And now people are choosing to take up solar panels of their own volition, and they don't need to be incentivized so much. So it's normalizing some of those measures that can be taken, but they're not being adopted yet. an equivalent in water might be to use that kind of funding to subsidise investments in grey water systems. So that's where a business or a home might have their plumbing adapted in order to collect used water that is still relatively clean, say from sinks, showers, used water, but that's perfectly good for using to flush the toilet, instead of flushing your toilet with high quality drinking water. That can make a significant saving. And rainwater harvesting is similar, but obviously, as it says on the tin, using rainwater to do certain water using functions like flushing the toilet where you don't need drinking water. So those opportunities have existed for some time. They're not being deployed, and I would say that it's just that there isn't a market there. So the providers like ourselves are having to do a lot of work, not only to offer products and services, but to try and create a demand for them, so that we can fulfill our objectives, which are to do the right thing, and show that we care and deliver in this space. But we definitely need to see action to kind of support that.
Excellent. So again, that leads into, what do you feel were the main challenges to opening the markets?
Well, what we've seen, certainly in England since 2017, when the market opened, is a sense of frustration that looking at the whole market, that competition hasn't had the impact that was hoped for. So we see in annual surveys conducted by the regulator since 2017 that among non-households, consistently awareness levels are at about 50%, which means obviously half of the market doesn't even know that there is a market and that they could switch supplier. So that hasn't improved, and as a result, really, so far about 20% of non-households have actually engaged and switched supplier. So that means obviously a large number of businesses still aren't benefiting, or not directly. They may actually be experiencing indirect benefits, like the pressure that the existence of competition puts on their supplier to do a better job. But yeah, albeit this isn't perhaps what people were hoping to see. And so you won't unlock some of those other benefits that I was talking about in terms of the cost savings, improved service, more innovative ideas, particularly around water efficiency coming in. It's very clear that there's a need to do something around that awareness piece. And it's a bit frustrating that there isn't really a discussion happening about how that might be achieved. My feeling is that the regulators continually wash their hands of that issue. And say it's up to the companies to promote competition and its existence in the market. I don't think that's very helpful, and there's a bit of an irony because the approach to regulatory default price caps in England specifically excluded any allowance for sales and marketing activity. So essentially we have to find a way of raising awareness without paying anything for it. So you see that's a problem that is going to continue until something changes there. We perceive that there's a nervousness about actually allowing competition to take hold. It's new, and we have a regulator who has a lot of experience of regulating the water market, not in stimulating a competitive market, and so that obviously requires adaptation and a different approach. The way that we've experienced it is that there's well-intentioned but misdirected efforts that, instead of thinking about how competition could be encouraged, where it's being seen to not be taking effect, the default and the fallback is on regulation. So, if 80% of customers are not benefiting, then we should do X, Y, and Z to protect those customers, rather than thinking, what's stopping that 80% of customers from switching supplier, and what can we do to encourage them to do so? And you can see a number of examples where that works out. So the approach to default price regulation, for example, looks at setting prices based on an efficient level. So the last time the default price was reviewed just a couple of years ago, the regulator took data from all the companies to see what the real cost to serve a customer is, and then it took a kind of an upper quartile level in terms of efficiency, like the lowest prices, and said, well, that's the cap, that's the maximum that anyone's allowed to charge. And so you're competing with a more efficient price in the market when you're trying to offer something that is better, that you're trying to attract a customer to your pricing. And actually it would be better if we took a more backstop approach, where there's an upper limit on price that leaves some room for suppliers to offer customers different kinds of services, all within that price remit, that it isn't all about efficiency, and that there is a genuine saving there to be offered to customers, that there is a benefit to being with a company as opposed to just staying with a default provider, because what's the point of switching if I don't really save any money and then I'm locked into a contract? So that's an example where regulation is being used, and then kind of actually preventing competition from taking off. Similarly, you know, we're seeing an increase in the number of new codes and rules coming in, defining what service should look like and kind of constraining companies. And that just kind of drives a homogenous market where all retailers kind of end up looking and feeling kind of similar to customers. And again, that just stops them from wanting to switch. Why would they? And regulatory change, when it's happening at an increasing level, is just distracting companies and taking up time and resource to implement those changes, rather than focusing on what we might particularly want to develop as a USP. It can certainly distract and dilute our ability to focus on other things. So yeah, I think there's a real challenge around how to stimulate competition, how the regulators can act to do that, rather than, you know, a well-intentioned but probably misdirected type of action. So we'd like to see some change in that in the coming years.
Excellent. So I mean, really, that leads on to, you know, what actions do you think the governments and local authorities could take to promote competition in your sort of ideal world?
Well, I think there probably is a role for governments to take. I think they need to look at competition, and I think that there is actually a number of different reviews ongoing that we're aware of and engaging with. But looking at competition and utilities, and you know, using competition in that space and what it can do, and making sure that the benefits that were anticipated can be fully realised. What is it that's holding those markets back from delivering those benefits for customers and for the environment? I think part of that would be looking at bringing more alignment across utilities, that will make it simpler for customers to engage with utilities, which are quite boring. And you know, you have to be realistic about how much engagement you can expect to get with consumers. So perhaps doing it in a cross-utility way, certainly for a smaller business as such as we serve, is a good way. We certainly find that it is. And then, you know, that takes away that complexity of having to navigate different markets that operate in very different ways, even though they're quite clearly very linked. You know, in particular, we want customers to engage with how they consume valuable resources. And the way that we do consume our gas and electricity is closely aligned with the way that we consume water. So why should the policy direction for those markets be different? And why should there be all these inconsistencies around how far regulation provides a central kind of line of travel, and then there's kind of a very different approach in another market? So in energy, there's been a very strong lead from regulation. So for example, there was a national smart metering campaign, and it's being rolled out nationally consistently. It's completely different in water. It's been left completely up to the companies to decide when and how to roll out smart meters. And as a result, we've got a really mixed bag where some areas are developing it, others aren't. And also the fact that there are multiple areas developing it in different ways. So we have, you know, it feels bizarre that we've got that complete difference. I think the water regulator Ofwat needs to look at what they can do to promote competition rather than compensate for the lack of it by regulating instead. A lot of our regulators are saying, our competitors are saying that the approach to default price regulation is holding the market back. And I think, to be honest, we'd have to agree, even though we're not being affected to the same extent because we are so efficient. You know, we're kind of benefiting from the current situation. But I think the reality is that it is harming the market and not helping. It does make it difficult to offer customers significant price savings or to do anything that is different to the other companies because it's just too costly. Innovation has a cost. And that isn't always recognised. And of course, then going out to win customers, particularly smaller customers, is just too expensive for a lot of competitors. And as a result, there is the very overlooked part of the market that is our target market, the smaller and medium-sized businesses who often are seen as being a bit excluded from the water market and not yet able to really access the benefits. Those are some key actions that the government and then the regulator should look at taking.
Excellent. So you mentioned smart meters there and sort of the technological approach.
Yeah.
I mean, Everflow takes a technology-driven approach to providing water. So what technologies do you think are going to shape the future of the market?
I think we'll see a move towards using data more cleverly. There's already a wealth of data in the water market. And yet there are still needs for more data. You know, there's the reason why we're doing a smart meter rollout, or that we're starting to move in that direction, which is good. And in a similar way, I know that on the water and the wastewater networks, we're starting to see so-called smart networks develop to increase the data that is available. And all with the intention, I think, of moving to a position where we can prevent problems from arising rather than reacting to them. And this is all about the kind of, you know, the big data, Internet of Things, that sort of side of things. I think we're at a really exciting point, actually, because we are on that brink of getting started with our smart metering rollout in water, and we can learn the lessons of the energy market. Smart meters aren't something that deliver results by themselves. They can have some impact. I think what happened in energy is that we gave customers the data, in-home displays. That gives customers visibility of what they're using, and it will achieve some results. But actually, I think it's really up to the industry to think about how we use data in a clever way. And it's tracking trends over time and turning data into actionable information that prompts behaviour change or action that needs to be taken on more of a one-off basis. And I would take, for example, leak detection. So at the moment, one of the worst things that can happen to a customer is that they develop a leak and they only find out about it when they get a very, very large bill. And we've had recent examples. I can think of a customer who has literally run up a bill in the tens of thousands of pounds. Not a big business. So a leak can be extremely damaging and costly to a business. But yeah, the way that we find out about them is because one of the things that we do at Everflow is we look at bill variance, and we're just looking for where we're seeing an exceptionally high bill, and that's how we'd identify that a leak is occurring. Well, that's not very sophisticated for, 2024. We ought to be able to do better than that. And so having continual monitoring in place in the form of smart metering will enable us to be much better at identifying when leaks are starting to develop and get them before they become more established leaks that have run for some time and run up these huge bills. So, we won't avoid leaks altogether, but we'll get them much earlier and prevent the harm that can arise, both to the environment in terms of the huge amount of water that's been wasted, and to the customer in terms of the wasted money that could potentially cause that business real harm.
Excellent. Yeah, so again, it's all about creating win-win situations. The environment's happy, the customer's happy, and you're happy. So that seems to be the way the water industry seems to be going now. So yes, I mean, I'd like to say thank you for that. I found that very interesting. It's a
Good.
area I didn't know an awful lot about, so I enjoyed learning about it. So I could just wish yourself and Everflow every success in the future.
Thank
So
you.
thank you to you and also to our audience for watching. Martin from H2O Global News. I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good talking to you.